Hi, this meeting is just getting underway. We're going to give a few minutes for attendees to get situated and into the session. So we'll start in a couple of minutes.
Awesome. We do have some people starting to trickle in.
We'll probably wait.
Uh-oh, lost Ed. Your video cut out for me, Ed. Did that happen for everybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my computer decided to rejoin the meeting for some reason. So. Again, this is the Vail to Tortolita virtual open house. We're going to give participants till about 6:05 to get into the session before we actually start the presentation. Okay, it's 6:05. I think we'll go ahead and get started. This is the open house, virtual open house meeting relative to TEP's proposed Vail to Tortolita 230 kV transmission line. Just as a point of information, this session is being recorded and will be made available on our website once we have completed tonight's virtual presentation. Next slide. So I am Ed Beck on behalf of Tucson Electric Power here supporting the line siting process for this project. Larissa, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Teresa Knobloch. I'm with SWCA Environmental Consultants, and we are assisting Tucson Electric Power putting together their application and doing some of the public involvement efforts on their behalf. Kara?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kara Bellavia, also with SWCA Environmental Consultants, and I've been supporting the project in various forms for almost a decade.
And behind the scenes, we have a moderator from SWECA, Jen Nguyen, who is helping with the technical logistics of this session. So, next slide. So what is the Vail to Tortolita 230 project, and why are we doing this as a virtual open house? Well, first of all, TEP identified a need for a line to be in service by 2023 at 230 kV to meet our long-term planning requirements. We were provided an opportunity to work with the Southline Group, who had a development-ready project in association with Western Area Power, and we were able to work with Southline to obtain the rights to build 64 miles of the Southline project, jointly with Western Area Power. One of the things that TEP must do in order to move forward with this project is go to the Arizona Corporation Commission for what's called a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility, which gives TEP as an Arizona utility the right to build a line of 115 kV or above. In this case, it's going to be a 230 line. And so part of our virtual outreach tonight is to give a little bit of background and reminder about Southline, and also provide the public information regarding our upcoming hearings with the Corporation Commission for our CEC process. Why are we doing the virtual meeting? It's because of state, federal, and local orders and ordinances, as well as guidance from health officials, that we continue to restrict and advise against large public gatherings. So that's the reason for this virtual meeting. Next slide. Before we dig into the details of the project, just want to give you a few ground rules. The participants have been brought in, or all attendees have been brought in as listen only, in a listen only mode at this point, to help with background noise. TEP strongly encourages the public to ask any questions you may have, and we'll give you a couple ways to do that. There's a Q&A feature that is part of the Zoom process. Next slide. So you can ask written questions via the Q&A button that should be at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom screen. You can type out your question and then select send to us. We'll receive it and then respond to it. You can also ask questions verbally. You'll have to raise your hand using the raise hand button. And there's two options, one by phone and the other via Zoom. And I need to move my screen here. Okay, so for the raise hand option on the phone, you must hit *9, and that will signal our moderator that you have a question or want to make a comment. And our moderator will call your name. Then you must unmute your microphone by clicking the unmute button on the Zoom portion or pressing *6. So I'm not sure, Teresa, did I get that right? Because for the phone, it's *9,
Star 9 is
And
to raise
then-
your hand on the phone, and then you unmute yourself with star 6. Yeah.
Got it.
Right now, I
Yeah.
don't believe
So-
we have anybody on the line, just so everyone that's on here currently is on via Zoom. So
Good. Okay. All right. Next slide. Just some ground rules, meeting etiquette for this particular meeting. When you're speaking, if you're asking a question or commenting, please say and spell your last name, your first and last name. And that's for our record, for the record that we take forward to the Corporation Commission. When you're interacting with the Q&A or speaking, making a comment, please refrain from vulgar or abusive language, personal attacks of any kind, and offensive terms that target specific groups. Also, please be respectful to participants and presenters. And remember, participants may be joining from locations where family members and children can hear what is being said. Next slide. So again, the project we're here to talk about is what we've titled the Vail to Tortolita 230 kV project. It's a subset or part of the larger Southline transmission project, which went through a federal NEPA process, National Environmental
Policy Act.
Process, several years ago. And so for those that are in the area, you probably already heard about the Southline project, but specific to what TEP is proposing, we're looking again at that subset, but the larger Southline project had 350 miles of new 345 transmission line, generally to the east of Tucson, and then an upgrade of 120 miles of WAPA lines within Arizona, and 64 miles of which is from the Vail area, south of Tucson, up to the Tortolita substation, which is in the Red Rock area, just northwest of the Tucson area. Next slide.
Sorry, it's not. There we go. Sorry.
So just as an overview, again, this is the Southline project map, which you'll see kind of with where the arrow's at, there's a red box. That's the specific portion of the project we're talking about. But just in general, the Southline project would extend from Afton, New Mexico. If you could point to that, Teresa, thank you. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, extending through New Mexico, across Arizona, up to the Tortolita area, which again is just northwest of Tucson, basically just across the Pinell County line, next to I-10. Next slide. This is we broke down the 64 miles into two portions just because it was hard to fit it on a map that would be visible. So if we start at the south end of the project, which is the right-hand portion of the screen, you'll see the Vail substation where Teresa is pointing to that little triangle. That's our TEP's Vail substation. We need to extend a piece of line from that substation down to the existing alignment that is the Western Area Power Line, which is that blue line running across the map. We're showing two routes from Vail because we're making the final engineering determination of exactly where that route will be. So there's two sub options there. Otherwise, we will be joining the Western Area Power Alignment, which again is that blue line running all the way up to the Demas Petrie substation, generally adjacent to and south and a little bit west of Interstate 10. And the Demas Petrie substation is located at Interstate 10 and Grant Road. And then the western lines continue on from there in a northwesterly direction. Again, generally adjacent to the interstate and then adjacent to the Santa Cruz River as it goes up through the Marana area. And then cuts back to the east, crosses Interstate 10 and into the Tortolita substation. And there's several places along the way that we'll talk about some sub reroutes that are part of the process that went through the NEPA process. Next slide. Again, the Vail to Tortolita project, 64 miles, which is roughly half of the 120-mile, what was called an upgrade in the Southline project documentation. The Southline project in general has an environmental impact statement that covers the whole line. But in Arizona, the Southline group also got a CEC, or Certificate of Environmental Compatibility, for the new build and some minor segments of portions that are related to the upgrade, but not for the upgrade itself, because Western Area Power is not under the purview of the Arizona Corporation Commission. So that's, again, why TEP is going forward with that ACC process. The project will basically replace wooden H-frame poles along the western alignment with steel monopoles, generally in the current 100-foot right-of-way that Western has for 52 of the 64 miles. And then within that, there is 2.25 miles of new connections into the Vail substation. And then 3 realignments throughout the route. And we'll get some more detail on those here in a little bit. Next slide. Okay, again, here is the Vail substation. In order to tie the existing WAPA alignment to the TEP Vail substation to connect our circuit, we've got 2 different options that we're looking at for that connection. And it will be roughly 2.25 miles of new right-of-way, 100 feet wide, and across Arizona state land. We will only build one of those options, the routes. They are options to each other, and whichever one we choose, the other we will not go forward with. Next slide. We also have what has been titled the Vail to Tortolita Old Vail Road Realignment. And at the request of Pima County, they asked during the NEPA process with Southline that a portion of the WAPA alignment be modified for future development in the area south of the Tucson International Airport. You'll see on the map in the upper left-hand corner is the airport. And just to the south of that is the red line, which is the existing Western Area Power alignment. And the blue line represents the proposed project realignment at the request of the county. And again, rather than having a diagonal line across some properties down there, by squaring it up, it'll be along road alignments. And the county was very interested in having that for future growth, economic development, road development, and so on. And that'll be about 6.25 miles of new right-of-way, again, 100-foot wide. Mostly, well, Arizona State Trust land and Tucson Airport Authority land. Next slide. Also, as part of the NEPA process, the Tumamoc Hill area, which is a joint project between Pima County and the university as far as some conservation efforts that have been going on for years there. The existing western alignment, again in the map shown as the red line that goes up and then diagonals across the edge of Tumamoc Hill, to reroute it to the blue line, which basically goes along road right-of-way. And it would be roughly 2.5 miles of new right-of-way, 100-foot wide. And the lands are county, university or board of regents, and Arizona State Trust land. And so that was also documented in that EIS process. Next slide. The last reroute that was identified in the EIS process came from the town of Marana and the Army National Guard. And they requested that a portion of the WAPA alignment in the vicinity of the Marana Airport be realigned for several reasons. One was to accommodate future expansion for the airport, but also because of some limitations on the easement that exists across that land today and development that is adjacent to that right of way. They requested that the alignment be adjusted as shown by the blue line. Again, the existing WAPA alignment is the red line. You can see it diagonals across a couple of the farm plots there. And it takes the lower portion, continues a straight line up to then a road alignment. And so that's about a mile of new right-of-way. Again, would be 100 feet. And for the most part, it's Arizona State Trust land in there. Next slide. Now, why is the project needed? From TEP's perspective, TEP system is reaching the limits on its transmission system within the service territory. And we need to add additional transmission capacity in the city. And one of the ways our planners have designed the system for future growth is to put a 230 kV loop or ring around the city. Today, our voltage is 138 kV for our local transmission system. And the planner said that a 230 backbone supporting that 138 is what the city needs. So as the Southline project was moving forward, TEP saw an opportunity to work with the Southline group and utilize a portion of their project to develop the one of the 230 legs in our future looped system. And by working with Southline, or ultimately purchasing rights from Southline to then work with Western, TEP would be able to build its 230 kV circuit, accommodate some needs of Western to rebuild the aging old infrastructure. Their existing 115 kV line dates back probably 50 years, and some of the poles are in dire need of replacement. And so not only could we get a 230 circuit, we could accommodate the Western needs and do it all on one right of way without encumbering even more land with a separate standalone transmission line. So TEP was able to reach agreement with Southline on the purchase of their development rights. And we have a general understanding with Western as to what our go-forward position will be with Western. We're still finalizing agreements to document that. But basically, TEP would be working with Western to rebuild that existing line and then incorporate a circuit for TEP on their line. And ultimately, the circuit that TEP builds, the 230, will eliminate the need for TEP to build multiple upgrades across its system that would otherwise be needed if we stuck with the 138 that's in existence today for TEP. Next slide. Again, the rebuild of the WAPA line in association with the Southline and their process for an EIS was authorized under that National Environmental Policy Act permitting process. And that EIS ended with a record of decision issued by the Bureau of Land Management in 2016. A link to the decision is available on the energy.gov website. We have a link to it within the presentation. I think I mentioned that the presentation is available on our website as a PDF right now. And when we complete this recording will actually be on our website also. Again, this project will replace Western's H-frame wood pole structures that are 50 plus years old. TEP circuit would be on one side of the pole and WAPA's circuit would be on the other. Tentatively, construction is scheduled to begin in 2022, and we're anticipating an in-service date for the project of 2023. Next slide. Here's a comparison or a view showing what the existing 115 kV single circuit H frames look like today as compared to the 230 double circuit tubular steel poles that will replace the H frames. Now, regardless of whether that new circuit were built as a single or a double circuit, likely it would be rebuilt on single poles versus the H frames, utilizing a vertical construction. So even if TEP were not part of the project, the Western replacement poles will still be taller than what those H frames are. So incrementally, the addition of the TEP circuit has very little impact on what the design of those structures would look like. They might be slightly shorter than what the double circuit is showing, but they would still be approaching the height that's shown for those structures because it is a vertical construction versus horizontal. And by that, I mean each of the wires of a circuit, which there are 3 individual wires in a circuit. In the H frame, they're laid horizontally, they're side by side. In a vertical position, they're stacked on top of each other. And it requires more vertical clearance and therefore the increased height of the steel monopoles. Next slide. Again, the original Southline CEC process covered only the new build and some other portions within Arizona that were not Western owned. For the portions that were West owned, they were exempt from the CEC process when Southline went through that process. Because TEP is a regulated electric utility in the state, we are obligated to get the CEC, that certificate, from the Arizona Corporation Commission if we own a circuit. And our intent is to own the circuit that goes on the Western poles, and therefore we're going through the CEC process. And so to get there, TEP and Southline jointly made a filing with the commission, initially requesting an amendment to this existing CEC that Southline had. And through that process, the staff recommended and commission ordered that some further hearings be held by the line siting committee of the commission to take some further evidence on the project to make sure the record is complete for the ACC to act on our request for amendment. Next slide. That covered the first bullet, I guess. So TEP is in preparation, developing that application. In fact, we have pretty much finalized it as of this afternoon, and it's going to the printers. It will be filed at the commission the end of this week, and we have hearings set to begin with the line siting committee on December 1st in Tucson. Those hearings will be held at the DoubleTree. There'll be information provided on our website and in an upcoming newsletter. And there will also be opportunities for virtual participation in that by the public. And again, the commission, the siting committee, encourages public input on projects where the public has an interest. Next slide. So here we said we would submit it by the end of October. We're actually going to be at the end of this week, so we're a little bit earlier than the end of the month. The line siting hearings will begin December 1. Those dates are locked in with the commission. And upon approval of that CEC, that is when the actual project design will begin. And then in close coordination with that will be landowner coordination, some specific project permitting that's required, road use permits and construction permits and so on. And again, our construction is planned to begin in 2022. Next slide. Now again, as I mentioned, for more project information, please visit the TEP website. If you go to tep.com and look under the project banner, then transmission lines, you'll see the Vail to Tortolita project page. You'll be able to find a PDF of this presentation that we're going through now. You'll find newsletters and public communications and materials that TEP has assembled. TEP has some commonly asked questions and answers for viewing. And within a few days, you'll see the actual recording of this open house presentation. And any questions that might come up in this process will be posted and answered and shown on that website. And again, our project website is specifically that www.tep.com/Vail-TO-Tortolita. Next slide.
Right.
After this meeting, TEP is looking forward to and accepting all comments from the public. We have various methods for taking those comments. You can comment by phone by calling our phone number. We have English number is 833-310-1668. And we also have a line for Spanish speakers at 833-310-1669. We also are taking comments via email, and the email address is Vail, 2, Tortolita @tep.com. We also have a comment form available on our website, and that's a long link. So if you look at the presentation, you'll see the linkage, but it's the https://uns.wufo.com, and a bunch of other letters to follow. And then we'll also do by US mail to, if you mail to attention, Vail to Tortolita comments, care of Teresa Knobloch at SWCA Environmental Consultants, 343 West Franklin Street, Tucson, Arizona, 85701. And if you look at the chat function on Zoom, you'll see that Kara had sent out those web addresses, so they're available there also to look at. And I think that was our last official presentation slide. We look forward to any questions any attendees might have. If you could either raise your hand or submit them in the Q&A typewritten form, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Don't have any questions yet, but we'll give people some time. There's a question from John. How many people are attending the meeting? And there are currently 8 attendees on Zoom, plus the panelists.
Yeah, so we have 5 attendees, 5 panelists and 8 attendees. This particular virtual open house is advertised via newspaper advertisement, as well as on Facebook, a Facebook ad to the zip codes that would be affected by the project or that the project touches. I mentioned before, we're producing a newsletter that will be going out to all residents within the vicinity of the project, basically 1 mile each side of the alignment. So there will be further information provided via that newsletter, as well as information on the public meetings to be held by the siting committee. And again, reiterating the interest in any questions and comments that the public may have.
We have another question from Fatima Luna. Is the newsletter bilingual?
We are producing it. There will be a bilingual version available, or Spanish version available, I guess I should say.
I should add, while we're on that topic, we do have a fairly extensive list of agencies, state and local government folks that the newsletter will also be going out to. That list was compiled from the folks that were previously interested, people in the area, cities and counties and other jurisdictions. That list has been updated from the last time that things were mailed out for the FEIS. If you particularly want to be on that list, please go ahead and submit a comment, either put your name in the Q of A or submit a comment on the website, any of the mechanisms here, and we can make sure that you're added to that list as well.
So again, this project did go through an extensive NEPA process during the EIS, and we know there was public participation and interest in the project at that time, and comments were submitted. And I know that at least Western's expectation was that this time around there probably wouldn't be a lot of public process or public input on the project because people are generally aware of it. But again, TEP encourages any interested party to give us their comments and feedback.
We have another question, this one from John. Are there going to be any other public meetings before the hearing?
At this point, we have not scheduled any additional. If we see that there's a strong interest that we should have another presentation, we would at least consider that. But the time frame that we're working with on this particular project is a little bit shorter than we normally would have. And it's because of the process that we ended up with at the Corporation Commission, as opposed to a blank slate line siting process. We're looking for an amendment to an existing CEC. So it goes through a little different process, but from the perspective of the line siting committee, they will still do all of their due diligence, and they will look for public input at the public hearings, as well as any of the comments, questions, anything that we receive get supplemented into our application prior to the hearing. So any information that the public may present or any questions that may be asked will also be provided to the siting committee for their consideration as we move forward with the process. So whether we will have a second public meeting at this point, we haven't scheduled one, but we are open to the need for that if there is a strong level of interest from the public.
And if anybody has any follow-up questions on that or wants to interact on that question, please feel free to hit the raise your hand and we can unmute you. You can ask the questions too. I'm reading these because they're typed into the Q&A, but you're welcome to speak up and interact as well if you'd like. The next question again from John, are there going to be any additional public notifications?
Well, again, the biggest one from our perspective will be the newsletter that gets sent out to all the residences adjacent, well, all property owners as well as landowners and the various stakeholders and agencies that we know of. That newsletter will go to them. And that newsletter is going to give some of the history of the Southline project, and then when, how to provide comments and so on. And you can The newsletter will also be available on our website if you don't happen to be in that delivery area. But as Teresa mentioned, you can just give your contact information and we'll send you one if you don't think you're in our notification zone. Again, our notification will be 1 mile each side of the center line of the western alignment that's out there today. And there will be a public notice of the hearing that gets posted to the newspaper, both the Arizona Daily Star as well as a publication in Marana and in Green Valley that will give details. Very briefly, as far as the hearings go, they're a quasi courtroom setup where the citing committee takes testimony from the applicant. In this case, it'll be Southline and TEP. And then they ask their questions and they do their due diligence during that process. There is an evening public comment session on the first day of hearings, which will be December 1st. They hold that at 5:30, starting at 5:30 p.m. to accommodate those who may need to get off of work to get there. They also do take comment during the meeting as time permits at the will of the chair of the committee. And also you can submit, again, written comments to docket if you want it to go directly to the citing committee. But as I mentioned, anything that comes into TEP also will be made available to the citing committee members for their consideration. So hopefully that answered your question, John, if you.
And John had another follow-up question about whether or not we will be able to complete all of our construction within the 100-foot right-of-way.
We likely will require some construction accommodation during the construction activity in some areas, but generally the construction should be within the 100-foot right-of-way. But for access purposes and setting up equipment, we may need some temporary construction easements in certain locations.
And John also commented that your response about the public noticing did answer his question. Thank you.
Okay, and one other thing I didn't mention is we'll also have signage along the project route. At this point, we've got 22 locations that we've identified to put, I don't know, you could call them a billboard. They're roughly 3 by 4 feet signs that will call out future site of a transmission line, public hearings to be held, and have linkage to our website, the phone number for further information for the public to get the word out to the public. So if you're driving by this alignment within probably towards the middle of next month, you'll see those signs out along the right-of-way.
And then we have another question about, are those signs going to be bilingual as well?
You know, the signs are, we have so much information to get on a sign that putting it in one language is pretty much takes up that whole sign. But again, what we will have is available on our website for a lot of this information. And likely on our sign, we can put, you know, for Espanol, and then put at least the website address so that people can get that information. And again, we have the bilingual phone number if someone needs information that they don't understand on the sign. At least if they see that phone number, they can give us a call and we'll have someone that can translate.
And then we have another question from John regarding the poles. Will the poles be shiny or look like wood?
You know, that's one thing that we're looking for comment from the public on. TEP's typical standard poles are the brown rust-colored poles, look very similar to a wood pole. And to a large degree, Western uses a galvanized type structure, which if you go around, you can see a few of those around town where they've replaced structures here and there. It likely will be one of those two. pole finishes. And that will be determined in the line sighting process. So again, if we get a lot of public comment in one direction or the other, that will help to make that determination. But we also have to resolve the issue between TEP and Western. And Western does have their longstanding use of the galvanized, and TEP has its longstanding use of the what we call a Core 10 structure. And so it's a little bit of negotiation between us and Western, but as well as then public input to the process. So if you do have a preference, please submit that as a comment to the project.
And John said, thank you.
Thanks for your questions, John. It's good to hear some questions.
We did have another person jump on the call. Just in case you are new to the call, we're taking any kind of questions. If you want to either type into the Q&A, you can type that question in, or you can also click the button saying raise hand on the bottom of your screen, and we can unmute you and you can ask your question verbally. We encourage everybody to ask any questions that they like.
Any other questions at this time from attendees? Well, we'll give you a few more minutes to think about it. And again, we're also open if you want to raise your hand to having some dialogue back and forth too. It's not just limited to specific questions. So if you have some other things you'd like to talk about on the project, please raise your hand. We'll have that discussion. Otherwise, we'll give it a little bit of time, and then we'll probably put a screen up just going partially offline. Will still be available. If questions come up, you can submit them, but we would turn off the video feeds. But we'll give you a few more minutes to see if you come up with any other thoughts or questions. Just out of curiosity too, did anyone that's on the call have any, see the Facebook ads? Just curious whether those were helpful at all or not getting interest.
I'm guessing most of you either heard about this from other people or saw the newspaper ads. We have a comment from Fatima. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. I apologize. She says, thank you. If additional questions come up, I will email you.
Great. Thank you, Fatima. Let's see, we've had a couple of people drop off. I'll give you another minute or two. If you don't have additional questions at this point, that's fine. And we would just go into kind of, I guess, hibernation, but still be available until the allotted time should any questions or comments come up. And again, if we're open to dialogue too, if there's anything of interest. But we appreciate your participation. Well, as I see our attendees dwindling, I think, Theresa, maybe we'll just, if we bring up the slide, just saying, enter the question and turn off video for now. And
Okay. I think this is the slide we intended for that, so I'll leave that one up, and I'll be kind of sitting right around here and watching for anybody popping on or raising their hand.
yeah, and I'll be around too. So thank you. Well, it looks like we've pretty much reached our allotted time for this virtual open house meeting. Again, any questions, comments, please submit them via our website. And we thank those who participated. And with that, Theresa, I think we can shut down.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for coming.